You've probably have seen a few things in the media about it, and every time I see a new article, there seems to be another adjective in there, and that just entertains me to no end. So let me see if I got it right. I think it's a super wolf blood total eclipse. So let's kind of pick that apart, and actually let's start at the end. So eclipse, totally cool with that. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. It is going to be an eclipse. Um, Lunar, yeah, that's worth pointing out. It is a lunar eclipse and not a solar eclipse. And we'll talk a little bit about the differences between those two. And I'm glad you brought up 2017. 2017 was just an amazing experience. Lunar eclipses are of course, different geometrically, but the experience is a bit different too. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Blood, well, that's the one I'm not quite sure about. I think that comes from the fact that they tend to turn the moon a little bit red, and I'll quiz you guys a little bit on where that comes from. Let's see what you know about eclipses. And the wolf part, no problem there. You know, that comes from some old, I believe, Native American legends about or ways of identifying the full moon. Oh yeah, sometimes that other adjective you'll see in there's the full moon, and that one's really redundant. Not quite as redundant as some of the other ones, but it has to be a full moon in order for a lunar eclipse to occur. And we'll look at a graphic in a moment that explains why that is. You have to have a new moon for a solar eclipse, a full moon for a lunar eclipse. And if you kind of think about where things are and where the shadows have to be placed, it makes perfect sense. And then super, well, I've learned to embrace the super moon. It's really not that big of a deal, but hey, if it gets people interested in this sort of stuff, I'm all for it. So let me share something here. So this is kind of the official view of eclipses, and this is a graphic that was created by a gentleman by the name of Fred Espernick. He is since retired, but he worked up at the Goddard Space Flight Center up in Maryland, and he's known as Mr. Eclipse for a very, very good reason. So there's a lot of technical stuff on here about right ascension and declination and that sort of thing, and how big the penumbral shadow is going to be and the umbral shadow. But this graphic here in the middle that shows where the moon is going to be moving through is pretty cool. It's pretty useful. So that dark orange circle you see right there, that's the umbral shadow. Even when you walk outside on a sunny day, you're actually casting two shadows. You don't tend to see it on the ground because of all the reflected sunlight around you, but you have an umbral shadow and a penumbral shadow. That umbral shadow is the darker one. That's what you see there in the center. So that's the difference between a total eclipse and maybe like a penumbral eclipse. The moon will start moving through that penumbral shadow on about 9:30, but things start getting really cool about 10:30.